Hello, RDs and RDs to be. Welcome to the RD Exam Ready podcast. I'm Zach Caseberg, your tutor, your coach, your guide along the path to passing the RD exam. My biggest passion is to help RDs and RDs to be just like you to know how to effectively pass the CDR exam. If that sounds like you, then hey, you are in the right place. If I were to ask you what makes a good test taker, what would you say? You might say a good test taker is knowledgeable. You might say a good test taker handles pressure well. You may think a good test taker has skills that you don't have. Some of these statements may be true about a good test taker, but I don't believe that's all it is. Having a high amount of knowledge does not make you a good test taker. Fact. Having a high amount of experience doesn't make you a good test taker. You would think that would be enough, but it truly isn't. Take me for an example, RD2B. I was a B student, a C student, sometimes a D student in college. I had very little clinical experience other than a 4-week rotation before I took the RD exam itself. So you may ask, well, how was I able to do it? I've been able to teach hundreds of students who are both knowledgeable, experienced, and I've helped them to pass the RD exam. And it wasn't their knowledge and it wasn't their experience that did it. How I have helped them to pass is I've taught them of how to perform on questions. Performance on questions and having a strategy for every question is how I have found is the best way to get someone to pass their exam. This makes sense, right? So much of the exam is just your ability to perform on a question, and knowledge factors into that, certainly, but when you have 125 to 145 different questions and opportunities to get something right, knowledge can't be the only thing that is helping you to get through those questions. It's very transferable. So, what I'm looking to do is make you better, is to really give you better performance on questions, as this is most transferable to passing the exam. Today, I'd like to discuss question strategy, give you the correct practices that you should go through as you study, and do practice questions to help you ultimately prepare for you to be ready to sit for the exam and perform your best. We're going to approach this lesson using practice questions to help us. Our first question, we're going to introduce my favorite strategy, the process of elimination, by applying it to a very simple food science question. Second, we're going to talk through calculations in ways that you can be a better test taker when doing your calculations. And thirdly, we'll expand this strategy to a more advanced question, like a clinical question with labs or a situational question, to help you to go through the correct process to getting the best answer. Before we read our first question, I'd like to talk a little bit about the process of elimination, or PO, as I also kind of sometimes refer to it as. I want to explain, listeners that have been with me for a while, they know this well, but new listeners, you might have no idea what I mean by this. So let's talk through it. Process of elimination is a long-used strategy for standardized tests, especially a multiple choice exam where you have 4 answers like the RD exam. With the process of elimination, you have 4 answers, and if you had to take a random guess on any of those 4 answers, if you had no idea, blind guess, what are the odds you're going to get it right? Well, 1 in 4, 25% chance that you're going to get that question right. And frankly, those odds suck. They're not good odds. I would not put my life savings on those odds. I would not put that in a question either. If I'm able to use a small amount of knowledge to eliminate one of those answers, what are my odds then? Well, it's a 1 in 3 odds or a 33% chance I'm going to get it right. That's good, but I can do a little better. Let's say I'm able to use some context clues, some clinical reasoning to help me to eliminate one more answer. Now I'm down to 2 answers as my best answer there. 50-50 shot, 1 in 2 odds that I'm getting it right. And that's really good odds. That's the ideal odds that we want when we're approaching every single question. Not just the questions you're not sure on, but you should also be using process of elimination for every single question. Because the RD exam is a game of odds. You're trying to get as many questions right as you can. So why not apply the strategy of odds for every question you commit to? The process of elimination I feel it also helps us to slow down, helps us to not make quick judgment or quick mistakes, because it forces you to walk through every answer, giving everything a chance. Whenever I start with a new student, this is the first thing that I go through is this type of thing. Let's apply and walk through process of elimination with a food science question. For our first one, the endosperm of a grain is primarily made up of blank. The endosperm of a grain is primarily made up of blank. First off, I want to make sure you've read that question carefully. You have your whiteboard, you have your scratch sheet of paper, and I want you to make notes occasionally to help you with this. I can pick out the pieces that I think are most important of this question. So, endosperm, primarily made of. If I just got rid of every other word in the question, that's the only thing that matters is endosperm primarily consists of. That's it. That's all I need. Now you can review your answers. So what I do is I take my whiteboard, I take my marker, and I write A, B, C, and D on there. As I did every single question for the exam 125 times. No lie. No lie at all. I did that every single time. Now, as I go through my answers, if I go through an answer and I like it, I'm going to put a check mark by it or a star or something that I really like there. If I'm not sure, if I just don't feel good enough to get rid of it or keep it, I'm going to put a little question mark by that so that I can help myself out there just to keep it in the running and not eliminate it. If I know it's a bad answer, I am crossing that thing out or erasing it completely because I don't want to bring that back in unless it really needs to come in. I don't want to confuse myself. So let's read through our four answers here. A, protein. B, starch. C, lipid. Or D, minerals. Those are my four answers right there. I've read those four answers to you, but what did you hear as you went through each of them? Put a check mark, cross it out, put a question mark, keep track on your whiteboard or scratch sheet of paper. Let's do this one together. A, for protein. When I think of protein in the endosperm, I don't really associate those two things together. The endosperm, it's kind of that white, palish part of the grain. It's very carbohydrate dense. I don't think of it as having lots of protein in it. So automatically what I do for A is I'm going to cross protein out. I'm not going to associate those two things together. I'm going to get it out of the running because I know it's not a good fit. B, starch. Now, when I think about it, I think there's a lot of carbohydrates located in that endosperm. I think starch is a good answer. I'm going to put a check mark by starch and hold on to that there because I feel it's what my brain gravitates towards when I think of the endosperm, and I think it's a decent fit. C, lipids. Well, lipids are present in a grain, but I don't really think of it being so much in the endosperm. I really think of it being more present in the germ. So to me, lipids, or could be a little bit in the endosperm, but not primarily. I would recommend ruling out answer C. I don't think it's a good fit. In D, minerals. Well, of course, there's minerals in the grain. I don't really usually think of it being in the endosperm, but maybe I just want to put a question mark by it. Maybe I'm not quite sure about D at this point. So right now I've gotten rid of answers A and C. Those are not my best answers. B, I put a check mark on, and D, I am questionable on as far as a question mark there. If I had to guess between the two answers, it's a 50-50 shot, 1 in 2 odds of getting it right. But I don't want to just go and guess now. I want to choose what I feel is my best answer, right? Which I felt like B was my best fit. So even if this was one I'm completely guessing on, I want to go towards the one that I feel the best on. Don't need to guess though. I'm going to choose our correct answer, which is B. Starch is the primary thing found inside the endosperm. Do you see how we approach that question with a thought out strategy in order to put ourselves in the best position to get it right? For some of you, that was like the easiest question ever. For some of us, it's really challenging to do a question like that. It doesn't matter. Wherever you are on that spectrum, you should be approaching each question the same as you would if you had really didn't know what it was. Because this process really helps you to prevent some of those mistakes that you might make by jumping to that. And what you've done is you've put the odds in the greatest favor that you can for yourself by going through each answer. And each time you're going to get more right than you will wrong because you're putting those odds ever in your favor, right? Next, I want to talk about a calculation question. Now, in a calculation question, it's going to be a little bit different approach. You're not really going to be able to use process of elimination for a question like this. Not really. You can cheat your way there, but no, it's not the best manner to do it. It's mostly because if you have a word problem, you're kind of just looking at the question and trying to work from the question to find the closest answer. You can't just look at the numbers and be like, I think it's this one. There's no way to really blindly do that unless you're really lucky. So let's talk strategy of how we should go about a calculation question. Now, with calculations, what I recommend you do is that you use your resources, your mind, your memory, your whiteboard, scratch paper, and your calculator. But we're going to talk about the calculator first because I want you to have some caution and not rely on your calculator too much. Calculators are wonderful. It's going to come in handy for the exam and it's going to make those calculations easier for sure. But one problem is that the calculator you use on the exam is extremely simple. My TI calculator that I practice with at home, I can carry numbers, I can carry equations, I can put variables in, I can do all kinds of things, right? The calculator that you're using for exam day is not going to have those skills. It's going to be 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, and you have to remember 2. You're not going to be able to just carry it on to the next thing. So in this case, we need to use our whiteboard to help us to do this math correctly. Even if you think it's so simple to do with a calculator, you should be using the whiteboard to help you out. So the first thing that I would do is start with your whiteboard and then go through the question. Begin by reviewing the question and then writing out the formula that you think fits with the question you're reading. Get that on paper so that you know what to start with. Then you can take the numbers or the values within the question and plug that into the equation that you've already started with here. That way you kind of know what you're looking for and what you're trying to start out. Also, it helps you to have that equation in front of you because sometimes when they give you just bogus values or bogus numbers, you know that if this is my equation, that bogus number may not fit into it. Let's apply this to a cost of goods sold problem. Number 2, a food service operation has a beginning inventory of $1,000. The ending inventory is $2,000, and over the month, $2,500 of food was purchased. What is the cost of goods sold for the food service operation? Okay, so you already know that you're doing a cost of goods sold problem. So you need to get that formula on paper for the cost of goods sold. And what that starts with is your beginning inventory plus purchases minus the ending inventory. No other way about it. I had to remember and use memory for that, but I've done cost of goods sold so often that it's pretty tattooed in my mind at this point. So make sure you, of course, know your formulas, know how to pull those out, come up with great tricks to do that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my values that I read about and I'm going to plug them into my equation here. And hopefully you're writing this along with me just to practice. Starting with my beginning inventory of $1,000 plus my purchases, which was $2,500, 2,500 minus the ending inventory, which was, I would have that answer in front of me, $1,000 there. Okay, so I have it all written down on the whiteboard so I can visually see it. This is so important because now I can see if I make mistakes, I can see where I went wrong. Whereas if you did it in the calculator, you have no idea where you went wrong. You're just restarting and wasting time, just redoing it and redoing it. So it's no good. I start with the problem. 1,000 plus the 2,500 is 3,500 minus my ending inventory, which was $1,000, to give me a cost of goods sold of $2,500. Then I'm going to go to my answers, and when I look at my answers, I'm going to choose what is exact or very close to $2,500. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose the best answer. So I'm going to give you A, B, C, and D. A is $1,000, B is $2,000, C is $2,500, and D is $5,000. So I look at those and I'm going to say my best answer is going to be C, $2,500. This calculation strategy can serve you so well, from ideal body weight to enteral nutrition, parenteral nutrition, BMI, everything in between that involves calculations. It's going to be very helpful to use this same strategy, to use your whiteboard, use your scratch paper, and help you to get there. You can use the calculator to help you to check your work. I don't want you to do any math in your head. That's by no means what I want you to do. But start on paper and then let the calculator help you. Don't start with the calculator first. Finally, let's talk through how we're going to apply process of elimination to an advanced clinical question. For an advanced question that has labs, difficult words, long drawn out situations, we're still going to use our whiteboard to help us using process of elimination, but we're also going to use it to help track these labs, the numbers, and how we feel about them. Here's our question, number 3. A patient is admitted to the hospital with the following lab values. Based on these lab values, the patient should be diagnosed with blank. Let's look at our labs. Hematocrit, 45%. Albumin, 4.0. Hemoglobin, 15. Mean corpuscular volume, 110. Glucose of 95. We need to use these labs to help us to diagnose this patient. And the first course of action we need to know is what's the normal values for these labs. So what I do is on my whiteboard or my scratch sheet of paper, I'm going to write each one of these labs on my whiteboard. And then we're going to talk about whether they're high, low, or normal. You can write these abbreviated or just, the full form. It's totally up to you. But let's start out with hematocrit. So I write HCT hematocrit, 45%. Okay. For hemoglobin HGB, I'm going to write 15. For albumin, I'm going to write 4.0 or ALB. My other labs for mean corpuscular volume or MCV, I'm going to write 110. In glucose, I'm going to write 95. Okay, so now we're going to go through each of these labs, and I want to choose whether it's low, high, or normal as I go through each. So let's start with hematocrit here. Normal values for hematocrit is about 42 to 57% for men, about 35 to 47% for women. So it didn't say a gender sex for this question. 45% fits with both of them. So what I would do is say hematocrit is normal. It appears to be normal. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a little horizontal line or a horizontal arrow right next to it. Now, as I go through my answers, I can refer back to this to know. Albumin. My albumin is 4 in the question. Normal values is what? 3.5 to 5 or so, 3.5 to 5.5. So this patient has an albumin of 4. This tells me that this is normal. So I'm going to put a little horizontal arrow next to that one there. Hemoglobin is 15. 15 for men or women is right about where we need it. So 15 is going to be just about normal for both of those. I'm going to put a little horizontal arrow next to that one there. Mean corpuscular volume. Mean corpuscular volume normal values is about 80 to 100 or so. So if I have an MCV of 110, that would mean that's high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an up arrow right next to that mean corpuscular volume pointing up to show that it's high. In glucose of 95, it depends on the patient. I'll let you use judgment for yourself. What do you think about the glucose? I think it's okay. If they were fasting, it would be okay. If it was after a meal, this would still be okay in that case. So now I have all those labs nice and mapped out, and I'm now going to bring process of elimination into the answers to see what my best answer is here. A, pernicious anemia. B, microcytic anemia, C, hypoalbuminemia, or D, diabetes. So now I'm going to write A, B, C, D on my whiteboard and go through each answer to see if it's good answer, bad answer, or I'm just questionable about it. Starting with A, pernicious anemia. Pernicious anemia is a macrocytic anemia, right? Meaning big red blood cells. Pernicious anemia is specific to a B12 deficiency. And in order to see if I have a macrocytic anemia, I have to look at the mean corpuscular volume to differentiate those. Macrocytic anemia, large red blood cells, and my mean corpuscular volume, for this patient is high. So I feel like this is a good answer that I want to hold on to because they have a high MCV. That would mean it's a macrocytic anemia. Pernicious anemia is a macrocytic anemia. Okay. Now, let's look at B. For B, it's going to be hypoalbuminemia. Oh, I'm sorry. That was not answer B. B was microcytic anemia. So just like we just talked about, mean corpuscular volume is how we would diagnose a macrocytic versus a microcytic anemia. Microcytic anemia would mean itty bitty, little itty bitty cells. This does not seem like it's a microcytic anemia because the mean corpuscular volume would have to be low. It'd have to be small cells. So I know that's not a good fit, and I'm going to rule out answer B because of it. C, hypoalbuminemia, low albumin in the blood. Well, I already looked and my albumin appears to be pretty normal, so I don't feel like that's going to be a good fit. I would rule out answer C there. D, diabetes. Diabetes, if someone who's fasted, we would look for a higher glucose, certainly if they had diabetes. 95 isn't much an indicator of anything. It seems pretty normal. So to me, I don't feel like this patient has diabetes, and I'm going to rule out answer D. So based on process of elimination, I have one answer left, and that would be answer A, pernicious anemia. A mean corpuscular volume that is high would mean a macrocytic anemia. That could be specific to folate or B12, but in this case, since pernicious was the only macrocytic anemia there, I would say that this would be my best fit for that. In those three questions, I've given you effective strategies for approaching them on the exam. And I don't want you to just use this on exam day. The point of this is that you use this in your practice, so specific to practice questions, because you're not going to be able to just do it on exam day once. You need to really apply it and get in the strategy. Use these skills and see what works for you when approaching practice questions and leading to the highest amount of success on exam day. If you want to try to get more resources for exam day, remember to follow me on Instagram at rdexamready. Check out the recent lives we've done on YouTube Live. So if you go to my YouTube page, rdexamready, you can look at the live sessions we've done. They're there completely for free. Please use those. We did vitamins, we did minerals, we did practice questions and deficiencies. It was really fun, and I really recommend you checking that out. You can watch the podcast on YouTube or wherever you prefer to listen and watch. We'll probably have a new YouTube Live coming up here in the future. We're kind of rolling back from baby stage a little bit now, so I'm trying to get those YouTube Lives a little more often, and I think we might do one on nutrition support coming up. So whether you're listening live or you're checking it out at a much later date, go to my RD Exam Ready YouTube page and take a look at that. That wraps up today's lesson, students. I hope you watched, listened, learned, and enjoyed today's show. Remember, passing this exam is a journey. We all need assistance along the way. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Tell other studying students, rate, review, subscribe, comment. Let me know how you like the show. And as always, remember, happy studying to you, RD to be. I'll talk to you soon.